Now we're gonna pause for a second. I'm gonna give y'all a little, let's call it a little drug dealer tutorial. This is why there's really only one drug you want to sell. Okay? This is why there's only one. I'll put it this way. If I were to, all right, I gotta say it this way. If I were to ever sell drugs again, once upon a time, once upon a time, all right? Let me school you. If I were to ever sell drugs again, the only drug I would sell is coke. Okay? Powder. That's it. I would not sell anything else. Hell nah. You don't want to sell crack because your clientele are crackheads. I really shouldn't have to elaborate on that. Okay? You don't want to sell crack because if you're selling crack, that means your clientele are crackheads. It's probably not the best clientele to have. You feel me? Look at this dude. You don't want to sell heroin, even though you can make a lot of money selling heroin. The problem with heroin is people have a tendency to OD on it from time to time. And when people OD on it, that's when the police get very fucking interested in finding out who the fuck is selling this heroin that people are ODing on. And when the police get very interested in finding out who the fuck is selling this heroin that people are ODing on, they typically find out who's selling the heroin. Another reason you really don't want to sell heroin is because for some fucking reason, heroin brings a lot of violence, at least to urban areas. Brings a lot of violence. And violence also brings the attention of the police. So you don't want to sell heroin. Now, you don't want to sell meth because that circle of meth users, those are the biggest snitches out of any group of people you could be selling drugs to. Meth users are the biggest fucking snitches there are. The biggest fucking snitches there are. I guarantee you, you sell some meth if you want to. Sooner or later, you are gonna have some random cop pull up on you and call you by your government name just to fuck with you and let you know, yeah, we know what you're doing, bruh, and we on your ass. And it's only a matter of time. I guarantee it, because the meth heads are some of the biggest fucking snitches you will ever see. Another reason you don't want to sell meth is because, they're really on it, police, they're really on it with the meth, because meth is one of those drugs that really mostly affects white people. Let's just say it how it is. And because it heavily affects white people, it doesn't really affect the black community. It affects the white community more so than any other community. The police are very interested in finding out who the fuck is selling it. And again, when the police become very interested in finding out who's selling this shit, they typically find out who the fuck it is. You don't want to be that guy. Now, marijuana. You really don't want to sell marijuana. I told you this was a drug dealer tutorial I was giving you. Now, marijuana. You don't want to sell. Listen, okay, there's only one good reason to sell marijuana. In 2023, there's only one good reason to sell marijuana. And that is if you smoke marijuana. If you smoke marijuana, if you have a marijuana habit is pretty fucking expensive, as I'm sure you weed smoking heathens already know. Let me school you how you can smoke marijuana for free. That's right. That's right. Big brother Kenyatta is about to school you. Listen, The only good reason to sell marijuana in 2023 is so that you can smoke for free. Because weed money is so fucking slow. Unless you've got clientele out the ass, you're not really making any money. You're not really making any money. And I'm talking about clientele out the ass. There's only two people I know personally who are making a lot of money selling weed. And both of them are grown fucking men who have been selling weed since they were teenagers. Okay? So we talking about the both of them have like 2 decades under their belt of selling weed a piece. Okay? So, and one of the dudes, you know, I'll be around him a lot. His phone never stops ringing. His phone never stops ringing. Like if I'm around this dude for about 45 minutes, within that 45 minutes, this dude done made like 5 or 6 sales. Like if you are selling weed, you gotta be selling it like back to back, back to back. Like your whole day is centered around selling weed. That's the only way you're really making any real money, selling weed. So the only good reason to sell weed in 2023, or to start selling weed, if you're just starting out, the only good reason is so that you could smoke for free. And let me try to make it simple. Say you go to the plug, right? You go to the plug and you buy like $200 worth of weed, right? You buy like $200 worth of weed from the plug. So when you break that down into 20 sacks, right? Break it down into dub sacks. It comes out to about, let's say, $350, right? Let's say if you break it down into 20 sacks, and if you were to sell all those 20 sacks, you would make $350, which means you would make a profit of $150. Now that might sound decent, but if you don't have clientele, how long is it going to take for you to sell all that weed to even make the $150? You see what I'm saying? That's why it's really not worth it, unless you're specifically selling the weed simply to smoke for free. Because what you do is, okay, I paid $200 for this. If I break it all down into 20 sacks, and if I were to sell all these 20 sacks, it couldn't be 350, 360. Say 360, right? So then you say, okay, well that means I can smoke $160 worth of this, and I basically just sell the rest of these dub sacks for the 200, so I get my 200 back, and then I can go get more weed from the plug. You see what I'm saying? And that way, you're smoking for free. Now, again, I suppose this would only be worth it if you have a hell of a weed habit, right? The type of person who's spending like $50 a day on weed. Or even, you know what? Even if you're only spending like $20 a day on weed, if you do the math, that shit adds up. $20 a day over 7 days, that's $140. 2 weeks, $280. You know what I'm saying? You do the math, that's a lot of fucking money a month that a lot of people are spending on weed. So, again, the only reason to sell weed is so that you can smoke for free. Now, if you somebody with a hell of a weed habit and you never thought about that, thank me later. Now, which brings me to the powder. I told you I was going to give you a little drug dealer tutorial real quick, and we're going to get right back to the video. Now, you see, this is why I'm strongly considering starting a educated Pookie show. The educated Pookie show. I'm thinking about starting another channel and calling it the educated Pookie show. You know what I'm saying? But listen, so, okay, powder. If you were going to sell drugs, and I do not advocate selling drugs. Drugs are bad. Drugs are very, very bad, okay? It's a bad thing. It's a drain on our society. even though, drug money does help keep this economy afloat, even though roughly about $500 million worth of drug money gets pumped into the American economy every year and helps to keep this economy afloat, drugs are bad. Drugs are terrible. You should not do drugs. You should not sell drugs ever. Okay? But if you were going to sell drugs, the one that you want to sell is powder. Cocaine. And why? Excellent clientele. Excellent clientele. Upscale clientele. We're talking about doctors, lawyers, physicians, dentists, pediatricians, restaurant managers, especially restaurant managers. My God, not that I have any experience. Restaurant managers, good Lord. Those would be some of your best customers, I suspect. Now, nurses, definitely the nurses, okay? Now, this is going to scare some of you folk. Like, some of you would never imagine who is out here sniffing coke. You would never imagine. I'm trying to tell you, when you first start selling that shit, you are shocked at who you're selling it to. It takes a while to get over the shock. I suspect. I'm not speaking from experience. I suspect. I suspect. And see, with the powder, right? Just guessing. But with that, say you had, 6 or 7 customers even, who between the 6 or 7 of them were buying, say, anywhere from $50 to $200 worth of it a day from you, a piece, all of them. That's all the customers you need, man. You're making plenty of money. Plenty of money. That way you could keep a low profile. But if you really want to go for the gusto, then hey, get all the customers you can. But if there were a drug you were going to sell, it should absolutely be the powder. But again, I do not advocate. Here on the Black Squad platform, we do not advocate such things. As I said, drugs are bad. Drugs are terrible. Okay? Everything I just said for the last few minutes, that was simply for the purposes of educating the masses. All right? That was just for education. It wasn't to glorify anything. Now let's get back.